All right, let's dive in. Today, we're tackling something a little different, but super relevant, I think, for like everyone. We're going deep on how to deal with humiliation. Yeah, using some
Mm.
Stoic wisdom.
I love it. It's one of those things everyone experiences, right? But nobody really wants to talk about.
Right. So we've got this great article that breaks it down, and it's packed with insights from like the Stoic all-stars. Epictetus, Marcus Aurelius Seneca, the whole crew.
Yeah, the Stoics were masters at navigating tough emotions, and humiliation is definitely up there, right?
Oh, for sure. So the article starts by reminding us that, yeah, everyone gets humiliated at some point. It's just like part of being human.
Right.
But here's where the Stoics come in. They say it's not the humiliating event itself that really does the damage.
It's how we react to it. That's where the real trouble starts.
Exactly. They were all about controlling what you can control
Hmm.
and what you can't
Right.
control.
Right. You can't control what other people say or do to try and humiliate you, but you can control how you react internally.
So empowering, right? To like
Yeah.
take back that control.
Absolutely. It's like turning a negative experience into an opportunity for growth.
So the first lesson the article dives into is don't speak ill of yourself. Which makes sense, right? Because it's so easy to just like spiral into negative self-talk after being humiliated.
Yeah, it's like you're giving the person who humiliated you even more power.
It's like you're agreeing with them. Like, yeah, you're right, I am stupid, or whatever the insult was.
Exactly. And that's where Epictetus comes in. He said, "No man is free who is not master of himself."
Deep stuff. So how does that apply to, like, dealing with humiliation?
Well, it's about recognizing that you have control over your thoughts. Even when you feel totally powerless in a situation, you can choose not to buy into those negative beliefs about yourself.
So instead of saying, like, ugh, I'm so dumb for letting that happen, you could say something like, okay, well, what can I learn from this?
Exactly. It's a much more constructive approach.
I love that. Okay, so the next lesson is don't rush to defend yourself. Now, this one feels a little counterintuitive because isn't it like a natural instinct to defend yourself when you're being attacked?
It is. But the Stoics were all about questioning those knee-jerk reactions. And in the case of humiliation, they argue that immediately defending yourself can often backfire.
Hmm. How so?
Well, think about it. If someone's trying to humiliate you, they're often looking for a reaction.
Rat.
They want to see you get flustered or upset.
Like they're trying to get a rise out of you.
Exactly. So if you immediately jump in to defend yourself, you're kind of giving them what they want. You're letting them control the situation.
I see. So what should you do instead? Just stand there and take it.
Well, not necessarily. There's a middle ground. The article suggests taking a deliberate pause before reacting.
Like take a breath. Collect your thoughts.
Right, exactly. That pause can be so powerful. It disarms the person who's trying to humiliate you because you're not giving them the emotional response they were hoping for.
And it gives you a chance to respond in a more thoughtful way.
Right. Instead of just reacting out of anger or embarrassment, you can choose your words carefully.
That makes a lot of sense. So instead of immediately firing back with a defensive remark, you could just say something like, you're entitled to your opinion.
Yeah, or even just, okay, simple but effective.
Yeah, I like that. And it goes back to that idea of controlling what you can control.
Exactly. You can't control what other people say, but you can control how you respond to it.
All right, this is all great stuff. But humiliation can trigger some really intense emotions, right? Like anger, shame, sadness.
Hmm.
How did the Stoics suggest handling those feelings?
Well, they certainly acknowledged the power of those emotions, but they didn't believe we have to be ruled by them.
Easier said than done, though, right?
Definitely. But the Stoics had a practice for this. It's called premeditatio malorum.
Premeditatio malorum. Sounds kind of intimidating.
It does, right? But it's basically just mentally preparing for negative situations before they happen.
Oh, okay. So like a dress rehearsal for dealing with tough stuff.
Yeah, exactly. In the case of humiliation, it might involve picturing yourself being insulted or put down, and then practicing how you would respond calmly and rationally.
So you're training your mind to stay grounded, even when you're feeling those intense emotions.
Exactly. And it's a really valuable technique because if you've already mentally walked through a difficult situation, you're less likely to be blindsided by it when it happens in real life.
I like that. It's like you're building up your emotional resilience.
Precisely. And the more you practice, the easier it becomes to manage those intense feelings and respond in a way that's aligned with your values.
All this is making me think back to times when I've been humiliated and how I could have handled those situations differently, maybe with a little more stoic wisdom.
I think that's a great takeaway from this conversation. It's not about dwelling on past mistakes. It's about using those experiences to learn and grow. and to equip ourselves to handle similar situations better in the future.
This has been so insightful. I feel like I'm already starting to see things from a new perspective.
That's great to hear. And remember, it's all about practice. The more you apply these Stoic principles, the more natural they'll become.
All right, well, we've covered a lot of ground already, but we've got even more Stoic wisdom to unpack. So let's take a short break, and we'll come back to dive into the rest of the article's lessons.
Sounds good to me. I'm looking forward to it.
All right, we're back and ready for more Stoic strategies to tackle those tough feelings of humiliation. And this next lesson, it really resonates with me. It's don't take it personally, which is like easier said than done, right? Because humiliation often feels so personal.
Oh, yeah, definitely. It feels like a direct attack on who you are.
Right. But the Stoics, they had a really interesting take on this. They basically said that most insults, most attempts to humiliate you, they actually stem from the attacker's own issues.
Their insecurities, their baggage, it's more about them than it is about you.
So instead of internalizing that insult, you can try to see it as a symptom of like what they're going through.
Exactly. Marcus Aurelius said, choose not to be harmed, and you won't feel harmed. Don't feel harmed, and you haven't been.
Whoa, that's powerful. So it's about like your perception of the event.
Right?
You have choice in how you interpret it.
You got it. You can get caught up in all that emotional drama, or you can detach and see it for what it really is.
I'm trying to wrap my head around this.
Yeah.
So instead of asking, why are they attacking me? I should be asking, what's going on in their life that's making them act this way?
That's the idea. It shifts the focus, right? Instead of feeling like a victim, you start to see the other person's perspective. You might even feel a little empathy for them.
Okay, I can see that. So instead of taking it personally, I can try to understand where they're coming from. That's a game changer.
It can be. The article even gives an example. Imagine a coworker who's always putting you down.
Ugh, yeah, I've been there.
It's easy to feel humiliated, right? But what if instead of taking it personally, you considered that maybe they're just miserable in their job or going through something really tough personally?
Suddenly their behavior makes a lot more sense.
It does, right? It's not about you. It's about them. And that can be incredibly freeing.
Okay, on to the next lesson.
Yeah.
And this one feels like a real challenge. It's don't seek revenge. I mean, when someone humiliates you, that desire for revenge, it can be so strong.
Oh, it's totally natural. We want to see the person who hurt us suffer, right? It feels like justice.
But Seneca, he had some really wise words about this. He said, how much better it is to heal than to seek revenge.
I love that quote. It reminds us that revenge might feel good in the moment, but it keeps you tied to that negative experience. It prevents you from truly moving on.
It's like you're letting that person continue to have power over you,
Yeah.
even after the initial event.
Right. And it's not about letting them off the hook. It's about choosing a path that leads to your own healing and growth.
So if revenge isn't the answer, what should we do with all those feelings of anger and hurt?
The article suggests some really healthy alternatives, like setting clear boundaries with the person who disrespected you.
Yeah, boundaries are so important.
Or you could calmly confront them about their behavior.
That takes a lot of courage.
It does. But it can be really empowering. And sometimes the best approach is to simply focus on your own self-improvement.
Yeah, like channeling that energy into something positive for yourself.
Exactly. It's about taking back control and moving forward in a way that serves you.
Okay, this next lesson feels like a core principle of Stoicism. It's focus on what you can control, which seems super relevant to everything we've been talking about.
Absolutely. It's about recognizing that you can't control what other people do or say.
But you can control how you react to it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Epictetus said, some things are within our control while others are not. It's so simple, but so profound.
It's easy to forget though, right? Especially when you're feeling overwhelmed by emotions.
Definitely. But the Stoics, they provide this really helpful framework for navigating those tough situations. It's about constantly reminding yourself, okay, what can I control here? And what's outside my control?
And in the context of humiliation, what are some things we can control?
Well, we've already talked about a few. You can control your initial reaction to an insult. You can choose not to engage in that negative self-talk. You can decide not to seek revenge.
And you can even choose to reframe the situation, find a more empowering perspective.
Right. The article gives this great tip. When you catch yourself dwelling on the humiliation, ask yourself, can I control what they said?
And the answer is usually no, right?
Right. And then ask yourself, can I control how I react?
And that one's a yes.
Exactly. It shifts your focus to where your true power lies in your response.
I love that. It's a reminder that even when you feel powerless, you still have a choice.
And that choice, that's where your freedom lies.
This is all so good. Okay, so the final lesson in the article is this moment will pass, which feels like a really important one because when you're in the midst of humiliation, it can feel like it's going to last forever.
It can, right? But the Stoics, they remind us that everything is temporary, even our most intense feelings.
Marcus Aurelius had this really thought-provoking quote about this. He said, "Think of yourself as dead. You have lived your life. Now take what's left and live it properly."
Deep stuff,
Yeah,
right?
right.
It's a reminder that this moment, this feeling, it's just a blip in the grand scheme of things. It doesn't have to define you or control you.
It's about remembering that life goes on and that this too shall pass.
Exactly. And when you're feeling overwhelmed by those difficult emotions, the article suggests a few practical things you can do, like just taking a few deep breaths and grounding yourself in the present moment.
Yeah, just being present can be so helpful.
It can. And another technique is to try to recall a past humiliation that once felt huge, but now holds less power.
I like that. It puts things in perspective.
It does, right? It reminds you that even the most painful experiences eventually lose their sting.
Okay, so we've explored 7 powerful lessons from the Stoics on how to handle humiliation. What are your biggest takeaways from all this?
Well, for me, it's really about that shift in perspective, right? Instead of viewing humiliation as something that diminishes us, the Stoics encourage us to see it as a chance to cultivate resilience, self-awareness, even compassion.
Yeah, I love that. It's about finding the opportunity for growth within those challenging experiences.
Exactly. It's not about denying the difficulty of humiliation. It's about choosing a more empowering response. And the Stoics, they give us the tools to do that.
It's amazing how these ancient Stoic philosophies are still so relevant today. You know what I mean?
Totally.
Yeah.
It's like they had this timeless wisdom about human nature and how to navigate the ups and downs of life.
I'm really struck by this idea of reframing humiliation.
Yeah.
Instead of seeing it as something that diminishes us, the Stoics saw it as a chance to grow and build resilience.
Right. It's about shifting that perspective. Instead of getting caught up in the negativity of the experience, you can actually find an opportunity within it.
Yeah, and the article ends with this really powerful question that I think we should all ask ourselves. It says, think of a time you were humiliated. How did you react? And now that you've learned these Stoic lessons, how would you handle it differently today?
Such a good question. I think it challenges us to really reflect on our own experiences and how we can apply these principles to future situations.
You know, as we've been talking about all this Stoic wisdom, I've been thinking about this time when I totally bombed a presentation at work.
Oh no, well, what happened?
I mean, it was a disaster. Technical difficulties, I blanked on key points.
Oh,
The whole thing, it was so embarrassing.
oof. I can only imagine. How did you deal with it at the time?
Honestly, well, I was mortified. I beat myself up for days just replaying every awkward moment in my head.
Yeah, it's easy to get stuck in that cycle of self-criticism. But knowing what you know now about the Stoics, do you think you'd handle it differently?
Oh, absolutely. The don't speak ill of yourself lesson would have been huge. Instead of dwelling on my mistakes and putting myself down, I could focus on what I learned from the experience.
Right. You could have treated yourself with the same kindness you would offer a friend.
Exactly.
Mm.
And the lesson about not taking things personally, that would have been helpful too.
Instead of feeling like a failure, you could have tried to see the situation from a more detached perspective.
Yeah. Maybe the audience was just tired or distracted. It wasn't necessarily a reflection on me or my work.
And that's a really important distinction to make.
This whole deep dive has been such an eye-opener for me. I feel like I have this whole new toolkit for dealing with humiliation.
Me too. And I think the beauty of the Stoic approach is that it's not about being perfect. It's about practice.
It's about continually striving to respond to challenges with more wisdom and resilience.
Exactly. Well said. This has been such fascinating conversation. Thank you for sharing your insights and helping us to see the power of Stoicism in a modern context.
It's been a pleasure. And to all our listeners out there, I hope this deep dive has empowered you to face those challenging moments with a little more grace and a lot more Stoic wisdom. Remember, no matter what life throws your way, this too shall pass. Thanks for listening.